"Drop your weapon now." The voice echoed through the abandoned warehouse as 3 police officers surrounded Detective Samantha Rodney, their guns trained directly on her chest. But here's what made this moment absolutely terrifying. These weren't criminals pointing weapons at her. These were officers, and they had no intention of letting her walk out of that warehouse alive. "I'm a detective. My badge is right here." Sam's voice cut through the darkness, her hands raised high, her gold shield catching the dim light filtering through broken windows. But Officer Ken Bennett wasn't interested in her credentials. The racial slurs that poured from his mouth were so vile, so filled with hatred, that they revealed the true depth of corruption she'd uncovered. "You should have minded your own business," Bennett snarled, his finger hovering dangerously close to the trigger. "Now look where your curiosity got you." But it was Sergeant Kyle Corney's cold, calculated voice that sent chills down her spine. Bennett handled the situation permanently. The way he said that word, permanently, left no doubt about their intentions. This wasn't an arrest. This was an execution. Sam's mind raced as she stared down the barrels of 3 service weapons. 15 years on the force, countless commendations, a decorated detective with an impeccable record. And now she was about to die in this God-forsaken warehouse because she'd discovered the truth they'd killed to protect. But here's what Officers Bennett, Corney, and their accomplice Derek Nicholas didn't know. Here's what made them pick the absolute wrong person to threaten. Detective Samantha Rodney wasn't just any cop. She wasn't just another officer they could intimidate into silence or eliminate without consequences. If you want to see how one woman's courage exposed a conspiracy that went all the way to the top, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story will blow your mind. But before we reveal how Sam turned the tables on these corrupt officers, we need to go back. Back to where it all started. Back to the moment 6 hours earlier, when Detective Samantha Rodney thought she was just investigating missing evidence from the drug unit. She had no idea she was about to uncover a conspiracy so deep, so twisted, that it would put her daughter's life in danger and force her to choose between her safety and her community's survival. Here's my question for you. If you discovered your fellow officers were not just stealing evidence, but actively poisoning your own neighborhood with the drugs they'd confiscated, would you have the courage to stand up to them, knowing it could cost you everything? Let me know in the comments below. 6 hours earlier, Sam's day had started like any other day. Detective Samantha Rodney wasn't supposed to be in that warehouse facing down 3 corrupt cops. At 38 years old, she was the youngest black woman to ever make detective in the 12th precinct, and her record was absolutely spotless. 15 years on the force, commendations for community policing that filled an entire file cabinet, a reputation for being methodical, thorough, and possessing what her colleagues called a photographic memory for details. Sam never forgot a face, never missed a clue, and never backed down from doing what was right. But success came with a price. As a single mother raising 12-year-old Emily Rodney, Sam worked twice as hard to prove she belonged. She'd grown up in the same neighborhood where she now lived and served, watching it slowly gentrify around her. New residents who called the police every time they saw black kids walking to school. Neighbors who questioned whether she really lived there when she came home in her detective's car. The irony wasn't lost on her. She spent her days protecting people who looked at her daughter and saw a threat. Sam's methodical approach and unwavering integrity had recently caught the attention of Captain Jennifer Walsh, who transferred her to Internal Affairs. It was supposed to be a promotion, a recognition of her skills. Instead, it became the assignment that would nearly cost her everything. "Rodney, I need your best work on this one," Captain Walsh had said, sliding a thick file across her desk. "We've got missing evidence from the drug unit. Cocaine, heroin, pills, high-value stuff from major busts just vanishing from our evidence room." The numbers were staggering. Over 2 years, evidence from dozens of cases had simply disappeared. At first glance, it looked like civilian employee theft, maybe a clerk with access skimming drugs to sell on the street. But Sam's reputation for thoroughness made her the perfect choice to dig deeper. What she found made her blood run cold. The evidence logs had been manipulated with surgical precision, digital timestamps altered by someone with administrative access to the system. But here's what made Sam's stomach drop. When she cross-referenced the missing evidence with arrest records, a pattern emerged that couldn't be ignored. Every single case involved minority defendants. Black men, Latino women, immigrants, people whose communities were already struggling with addiction and violence. And the evidence wasn't just missing, it was being removed after successful prosecutions. After these people had already been convicted and sentenced, someone was stealing drugs from cases that were already closed, ensuring there would be no immediate investigation. Then Sam found the name that changed everything. Officer Derek Nicholas. Nicholas' signature appeared on evidence room logs more than any other officer. An 8-year veteran with a previously clean record, recently divorced, facing financial troubles that his police salary couldn't solve. But Nicholas wasn't just accessing evidence randomly. He was targeting specific cases, specific drugs, following a pattern that suggested careful planning and inside knowledge. While Sam was uncovering this conspiracy at work, the effects were literally hitting home. Her daughter Emily started mentioning increased police presence in their neighborhood. Kids being stopped and searched for looking suspicious. Emily, with the innocence of a 12-year-old, asked the question that haunted Sam. "Mom, why do some cops treat people differently?" Sam recognized some of those officers from her own precinct. Men she'd worked alongside, shared coffee with, trusted to have her back. Now they were treating her neighbors, her daughter's friends, like criminals for walking while black. "I'll make sure our neighborhood stays safe," Sam promised Emily, not knowing how prophetic those words would become. Sam's investigation led her to surveillance that revealed the shocking truth. Through her telephoto lens, she watched Officer Derek Nicholas meeting with Vincent Cruz, a known drug dealer whose arrest record went back 15 years. But this wasn't an arrest. This wasn't an undercover operation. Nicholas was handing Cruz packages, and Cruz was handing Nicholas envelopes thick with cash. The photos were crystal clear. Nicholas, in uniform, selling confiscated drugs back to the streets. The very drugs that had been seized to protect communities were being recycled back to destroy them. But when Sam searched Nicholas's locker, she found something even more damning, a burner phone filled with encrypted messages. "The operation stays quiet," one message read. "Move the product tonight." Another, "Keep the heat off until we clear the backlog." This wasn't one corrupt cop acting alone. This was an organized operation with multiple players, careful planning, and systematic execution. Sam did what any honest cop would do. She reported her findings to Captain Walsh. Walsh seemed supportive, concerned, professional. She promised backup for dangerous surveillance operations and assured Sam that the department would support her investigation fully. But then Sam noticed something troubling. Walsh was asking very specific questions about evidence, locations, about Sam's methods, about what other officers might know about the investigation. Questions that seemed designed to gather intelligence rather than provide support. The next morning, Nicholas' locker was empty. Cleaned out completely, as if he'd never used it. The security footage from the evidence room, footage that would have shown Nicholas's illegal access, had mysteriously corrupted. Files that Sam had carefully organized were missing pages. In that moment, staring at the empty locker, Sam realized the horrifying truth. She hadn't just uncovered a conspiracy. She'd walked straight into a trap. Captain Walsh, the woman who'd promoted her, who'd praised her thoroughness, who'd promised her support. Captain Walsh had betrayed her to the very criminals she was investigating. Sam was now completely alone, facing a corruption so deep it reached into the highest levels of her department. And she was about to discover that Nicholas, Bennett, and Corny were just the beginning. Sam was completely on her own now. With Captain Walsh's betrayal fresh in her mind, she couldn't trust anyone in the department hierarchy. But giving up wasn't an option, not when the corruption was literally destroying her community. So Sam made a decision that would either save her neighborhood or get her killed. She went rogue. Using her detective skills and personal resources, Sam began an independent investigation that revealed the true scope of the conspiracy. She obtained financial records for Nicholas, Bennett, and Corney through contacts outside the department. What she found was a smoking gun that proved this wasn't just about one corrupt cop. All three officers had made large cash deposits into their personal accounts, deposits that occurred the day after major drug seizures. Nicholas deposited $15,000 the day after a cocaine bust that netted 50 kilograms. Bennett banked $8,000 after a heroin seizure worth $500,000 on the street. Corney made regular deposits of $5,000 to $20,000, always within 24 hours of evidence being logged from major arrests. The pattern was undeniable. This corruption involved multiple officers across different units, working together in a coordinated scheme to steal drugs and sell them back to the streets. Sam set up independent surveillance using her own equipment, her own car, her own time. She was risking everything, but the alternative was watching her community die. Then the investigation became devastatingly personal. Emily's school reported increased drug activity in the surrounding area. Kids as young as 10 were being approached by dealers. Overdoses among teenagers had tripled in 6 months. Sam connected the dots with sickening clarity. The stolen evidence drugs were flooding her own neighborhood. The very drugs that Nicholas, Bennett, and Corney were stealing were being sold to kids in Emily's school, to families Sam had grown up with. Mrs. Dorothy Sultan, Sam's 73-year-old neighbor who'd watched Sam grow up, approached her with photographs that made her heart sink. "Sam, honey, I've been taking pictures of these dealers because I'm scared for the children," Mrs. Sultan said, showing Sam dozens of photos on her phone. "Some of these boys are dealing drugs. I recognize them. They're getting their supply from somewhere new, and the drugs are stronger than anything we've seen before." Sam stared at the photos and realized the full horror of what was happening. The corruption wasn't just about money. It was systematically poisoning her community, destroying the very neighborhoods these officers had sworn to protect. Her investigation had revealed that this conspiracy was literally killing her neighbors. But the corruption went even deeper than Sam had imagined. Her investigation revealed evidence tampering in multiple precincts across the entire city. This wasn't limited to her precinct or even her district. The pattern showed a coordinated effort specifically targeting minority communities. Arrest reports were being falsified to justify larger evidence seizures. Some arrestees were being released without charges after their evidence mysteriously disappeared, evidence that was then sold back to dealers in those same communities. Sam realized she wasn't looking at theft. She was looking at systematic community destruction orchestrated by the very people paid to protect those communities. If you're as shocked by this corruption as I am, make sure you subscribe, because what happens next will leave you speechless. That's when they sent the warning. Sam found an anonymous note tucked under her car's windshield wiper. "Stop digging, or your daughter pays." The message was clear, direct, and terrifying. But it got worse. The next day, Sam came home to find her house had been broken into. Nothing was stolen, but the message was unmistakable. They'd been inside Emily's room, moved things around just enough to let Sam know they could reach her daughter anytime they wanted. Emily noticed her mother's fear. "Mom, why do you seem scared all the time now?" she asked, with the innocent concern of a 12-year-old who just wanted her mother to feel safe. Sam struggled to maintain normalcy while installing a security system and beginning to carry her service weapon even when off-duty. Sam faced an impossible decision: abandon the investigation and let the corruption continue destroying her community, or risk everything, including Emily's life, for justice. Sam chose to fight. The trap was set with surgical precision. Sam received an anonymous text message claiming that Nicholas and his crew would be at an abandoned warehouse with a large shipment of stolen evidence, planning to move it to dealers that night. The message provided specific details: the exact location, the time, even the type of drugs involved. Sam knew this could be a trap. Every instinct screamed danger. But this was also potentially her only chance to gather definitive proof with the stolen evidence actually in their possession. She made careful preparations, arranging for all her evidence files to be automatically uploaded to cloud storage, leaving detailed notes for Emily explaining everything in case something happened to her. But when Sam arrived at that warehouse, she immediately realized she'd walked straight into an ambush. Nicholas, Bennett, and Corny emerged from the shadows like predators who'd been lying in wait. They discovered her investigation through Captain Walsh, and they knew about every piece of evidence she'd gathered. Sergeant Corny's voice was cold as ice. "We know about your little evidence files, Detective. We know about your surveillance photos. We know everything." But it was Officer Bennett who revealed the true depth of their hatred. The racial slurs that poured from his mouth were so vile, so filled with contempt, that they revealed this wasn't just about money or corruption. Bennett called her uppity, used words that stripped away any pretense of professional courtesy, and made it clear that in his mind, she was nothing more than a black woman who'd forgotten her place. "You should have stayed quiet like a good little girl," Bennett snarled. "Now you're gonna disappear and nobody's gonna come looking for some troublemaker cop who couldn't mind her own business." They demanded she turn over all evidence and resign quietly. But Sam could see it in their eyes. They had no intention of letting her walk away. She was a threat that needed to be eliminated permanently. That's when Sam realized they had no idea who they were really threatening. The psychological warfare began immediately. Sergeant Corny stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper as he began telling Sam stories designed to break her spirit. "You know Detective Torres from the 8th Precinct?" he asked with a cold smile. "Had a terrible car accident last month, brake failure on a steep hill. Such a shame, she was asking too many questions about missing evidence too." Corny continued his catalog of accidents. Officer Johnson, who'd been investigating irregularities in the evidence room, found dead in his apartment from an apparent drug overdose, despite never having touched drugs in his life. Detective Brown, who'd noticed patterns in case files, tragic drowning accident while fishing alone. Each story was delivered with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather, but the message was crystal clear. Cross them, and you die. But it was Bennett who made the threat that nearly broke Sam's composure. He brandished his service weapon, pointing it directly at her chest, while describing in graphic detail what would happen to 12-year-old Emily if Sam didn't cooperate. "That pretty little daughter of yours walks to school every morning at 7:45, Bennett said with a sickening grin. "Such a dangerous neighborhood. Anything could happen to a child walking alone." The racial hatred in his voice was unmistakable as he continued. "Maybe she'll have the same kind of accident as her uppity mama if you don't start showing some respect." Nicholas tried a different approach, attempting to play the reasonable negotiator. "Look, Sam, we don't have to be enemies here," he said, his voice almost gentle. "You're smart, thorough, exactly the kind of cop we could use. Join us instead of fighting us. There's enough money for everyone, and your daughter could have a very comfortable life." He painted a picture of financial security, of Emily attending private schools, of Sam never having to worry about money again. "We're not monsters," Nicholas insisted. "We're just cops trying to make a better life for our families. The drugs are going to be sold anyway. Why shouldn't we profit instead of letting street dealers get rich?" But Sam's training and instincts told her everything she needed to know. Despite their words about cooperation and negotiation, she could see it in their eyes, in their body language, in the way they'd positioned themselves. They had no intention of letting her walk out of that warehouse alive. This entire conversation was just them savoring the moment before they killed her. Sam used every technique she'd learned in 15 years of police work to stay calm while her mind raced through possible escape routes. The warehouse had 3 exits: the main door behind Nicholas, a side door blocked by Bennett, and emergency exit near the loading dock that Corny was covering. Her service weapon was holstered, but with 3 guns already drawn on her, reaching for it would be suicide. That's when Sam played the card that changed everything. "You know what, gentlemen?" Sam said, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "You've been very thorough in explaining your operation, very detailed. I especially appreciated the part about Torres's brake failure and Johnson's overdose." The 3 men exchanged confused glances. Why was she thanking them for threatening her? Sam smiled for the first time since entering the warehouse. "I appreciated it. because every word you just said has been recorded on a hidden body camera that's been transmitting everything directly to the FBI field office for the past 20 minutes. The color drained from Nicholas' face. Bennett's gun hand started shaking. Corny took a step backward as if he could somehow distance himself from his own words. The evidence files, the surveillance photos, the financial records showing your cash deposits, your detailed confessions about murdering fellow officers, it's all been uploaded automatically to federal servers, Sam continued. Even if you kill me right now, which you were planning to do anyway, the FBI already has everything they need to destroy all of you. That's when Captain Walsh entered the warehouse, and for a moment, Sam's heart sank. Her corrupt captain had come to ensure the job was finished properly. Walsh surveyed the scene, 3 officers with drawn weapons surrounding a detective with her hands raised. "Stand down, all of you," Walsh commanded with authority. Bennett laughed bitterly. "Captain, she's been recording everything. She knows about Torres, about Johnson, about all of it." "I know," Walsh replied calmly. Sam felt her world collapse. Even her emergency plan had failed. Walsh was going to help them cover up the murder and dispose of the evidence. But then Walsh said the words that changed everything. "FBI, everyone on the ground now." The shocking twist hit like lightning. Captain Jennifer Walsh wasn't a corrupt cop who'd betrayed Sam. She was an undercover federal agent who'd been investigating the conspiracy for months, and Sam's investigation had provided the final pieces of evidence they needed. Suddenly, the warehouse filled with red laser dots as FBI tactical team members emerged from concealment positions throughout the building. They'd been there the entire time, waiting for the corrupt officers to incriminate themselves completely. "This is FBI. Drop your weapons and get on the ground." Nicholas immediately dropped his gun and raised his hands. Corny tried to run toward the emergency exit, but found himself facing 2 tactical officers with automatic weapons. But Bennett panicked. Instead of surrendering, he spun toward Sam and pulled the trigger, determined to kill her, even if it meant dying in the process. His final act would be murdering the detective who'd brought down their operation. That's when 15 years of police training and Sam's lightning-fast reflexes saved her life. The gunshot echoed through the warehouse, but it wasn't Sam who hit the ground. In one fluid motion, her 15 years of police training kicked in. As Bennett's finger squeezed the trigger, Sam dropped low and swept his legs, sending him crashing to the concrete floor. His shot went wide, shattering a window 20 feet away. Before he could recover, Sam had disarmed him completely, his weapon sliding across the warehouse floor toward the FBI tactical team. Corny made one desperate attempt to destroy evidence, pulling out his phone and frantically trying to delete files. But it was too late. The digital backups had already preserved everything. His panicked button pressing was just further evidence of his guilt as FBI agents tackled him to the ground. Nicholas, ever the negotiator, immediately began trying to cut a deal in real time. "I can give you names. I know about operations in other cities. I'll testify against everyone if you give me immunity." But his pleas fell on deaf ears. All 3 officers were arrested on federal charges, including conspiracy, drug trafficking, civil rights violations, and in Bennett's case, attempted murder of a federal witness. But Sam's investigation had uncovered something even bigger than anyone imagined. Her meticulous evidence led federal investigators to discover similar corruption networks in 6 other cities across the country. The conspiracy wasn't just local. It was a nationwide operation that had been systematically targeting minority communities for years. The personal victory was just as sweet as the professional one. When Sam finally made it home that night, Emily ran into her arms with tears of pride streaming down her face. "Mom, Mrs. Sultan told me what you did. You saved our whole neighborhood." The community rallied around Sam in a way that brought tears to her eyes. Neighbors who'd watched her grow up, families she'd protected, kids she'd helped, they all came together to celebrate not just the corruption being exposed, but the courage it took for one of their own to stand up against impossible odds. Sam was promoted to head a new internal affairs task force specifically designed to root out corruption and rebuild community trust. Mrs. Dorothy Williams, the elderly neighbor who'd shown Sam those dealer photos, hugged her tight and said, "Child, you did what needed doing. Our streets are safe again because of you. And the streets were safer. Within weeks of the arrests, drug activity in Sam's neighborhood dropped dramatically. The pipeline of stolen evidence drugs had been completely shut down, and legitimate law enforcement operations were finally making a real difference. The broader impact was staggering. The federal investigation that grew from Sam's work led to 47 arrests across multiple police departments nationwide. New oversight protocols were implemented citywide, including independent monitoring of evidence rooms and mandatory body cameras for all officers handling seized drugs. Sam found herself testifying before a congressional committee on police corruption, sharing her story with lawmakers who were crafting new legislation to prevent this kind of systematic abuse. She became a national advocate for community police accountability, speaking at conferences and training academies about the importance of officers who look like the communities they serve. But perhaps the moment that meant the most to Sam came when Emily's essay about her mother won the state competition. The title said it all. My Hero Fights for Justice. In it, Emily wrote about watching her mother risk everything to protect their community, and how it taught her that sometimes doing the right thing means standing alone against overwhelming odds. Sam's reflection on the entire experience became her guiding philosophy. Sometimes standing up means standing alone, but truth always finds a way to surface. The badge I wear doesn't just represent authority. It represents a promise to serve all people equally, regardless of the color of their skin or the neighborhood they call home. The healing process in Sam's community didn't happen overnight, but it began with honest conversations and genuine accountability. Trust between police and residents slowly started to rebuild as new officers were assigned to the precinct. Officers who understood that their job was to protect and serve, not exploit and intimidate. Today, you can see Sam and Emily walking through their neighborhood in the evening, talking and laughing together. The streets that were once flooded with stolen drugs are now filled with children playing safely. The community gardens have returned. The elderly residents sit on their porches without fear. And Detective Samantha Rodney continues her work, ensuring that no corrupt officer will ever again use their badge as a license to poison the very communities they swore to protect. The badge carries a promise, and Sam Rodney proved that some promises are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. If this story of courage and justice inspired you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because we share great stories.